Hi everyone, it's Tom Mackie here. Thanks for coming out with me today on this absolutely stunning day in Suffolk. I've brought you out to a location mainly just to get out of the office. I didn't really want to do this video in the office because it's so nice. This is probably one of the nicest days that we've had this year. It's now, I think it's 24 degrees Celsius, it's about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And it just seemed a shame to sit in my office, and besides I didn't really want to clear off my desk for the video. But I brought you here to one of my favorite locations, not far from my home. This is called Herringfleet Mill, just over the border in Suffolk. But that's not why we've come out here today. I've come out here to talk about my 10 top landscape locations in the United States. So for you people in the US, our US viewers, if you're planning on doing staycations this year, you're not going to be traveling abroad. I know that they're starting to open up some of the countries over here in Europe, but if you do plan on staying in the US, I've compiled this list of what I think are my favorite top landscape locations. Now this was really hard to choose because, as you can imagine, there's just so much to photograph in the US. So I've based this on two different factors. Number one, the experience. For me, landscape photography is all about the experience. And if I turn up at a location and I have to share tripod space with 50 other photographers, it's not going to be a good experience. So I have taken those sort of locations off the list. They're fantastic locations to shoot, such as, I don't know, Mesa Arch is probably one of the notorious locations in Canyonlands in Utah. It's overrun now with people, and if you're not there first, and it's not a pleasurable experience. Another location that I've photographed over the years are the slot canyons in Page. Now, when I first started photographing them, it was just myself, and maybe the Indian guide, or maybe a few other people, but hardly anybody went in there. And it's become so commercialized, which is great for the Navajo Indians. They're actually making money off of their natural resources now. But in doing so, they become a victim of their own success. Me as a photographer, the last time I turned up there with a workshop group, I just asked, they had a toll booth. This is one thing. They had a toll booth going in. I thought, oh, this is not a good idea. And this is lower antelope. And I just asked the woman, I said, any chance of getting photography? She said, nope, it's just too many people. So we turned around and I said, that's it. That's another location that's ruined. It's a shame, but so the experience is the ultimate reason why I've chosen the locations on this list. The second factor is the number of compositions that you can create at that location. So instead of, say, being just a one-shot location, I want a place that I can get multiple compositions or photograph something in that area. Okay, we're going to start in reverse order. At number 10, starting on the east coast of America, there is a location there that I reckon is the best location in the US for photographing waterfalls. Now, you probably haven't heard of this place. It's called Ricketts Glen State Park. It's in north central Pennsylvania. And if you ever say plan a trip to New York City, it's well worth a little short drive, 3 hours. And in American terms, that's just a Sunday afternoon drive. So do that drive out to Ricketts Glen and plan on spending a day photographing these waterfalls. Now there are 21 in total. 15 of them are worth photographing in my opinion. They're ranging in size from, say, 11 feet to 93 feet high. Most of them are cascades. I don't ever recall seeing any spills. I don't particularly like spills because they need to be really high in order to be impressive. But these were just beautiful cascades and straight falls like curtains. But now there are no facilities there, so make sure you take plenty of water and food in with you for the day. Start early in the morning. I would recommend starting at the Rose Lake entrance, and there's a loop trail, 7.2 miles, and it will keep you busy all day long. Now, the best time of the year to go, I reckon, is in the spring or the summer. I was there in the summer and the water flow was fantastic. If you go in the autumn, the colors are great, but you run that risk of not having enough water for the falls. Now, a little tip about photographing waterfalls, make sure you take a polarizing filter. This will remove all the reflections off the rocks, the foliage, and the sheen off the water. And it'll increase your saturation and make those lush greens pop out. Staying on the East Coast, New England has so much to offer photographers. My go-to place is at number 9 on my list, Acadia National Park. Now, Acadia has Cadillac Mountain. Views from there at dawn are stunning. And then you have the classic fishing villages with the lobster pots and the colorful buoys. And then you have the rugged coastline with Bass Harbor Lighthouse, which you can see in this picture. It is a place that is probably one of the most photographed lighthouses in Maine. So I would recommend, if you go in October when all the autumn colors are at their peak, go early and get a place that nobody can set up in front of you. Now, I remember when I did this shot, I set up right on the edge of the rocks so that nobody could set up in front unless they wanted to stand in the water. I used a Lee Big Stopper filter on this image. Now, this is a 10-stop ND filter, and it allowed me to achieve several minutes for my exposure. And in doing so, that smooths out the water and increases the reflections, as you can see in this image. So, best time of the year to go, yeah, I would say definitely autumn is a given. But if you want a quieter time to go, go in the winter time. And you will probably be the only one there. But there is so much to photograph along the coast, and it's not season dependent. So you can get some great coastal photography done then. Now, a word of caution though, a lot of the hotels on Mount Desert Island actually close at the end of October. They actually turn the water off. There are some places that you can stay, but you want to check these out. If you've got a motor caravan, then no problem. But so that's my number 9 spot. At number 8, we're moving out west to Mono Lake, California. Now, the first time I saw a picture of Mono Lake was back in 1975 on the cover of Pink Floyd's album. With the diver, you might remember it, the diver going head first into the lake with these tufa formations coming up out of it. And I thought, wow, this is an amazing place. I've got to go find this. And since then, I've been there numerous times over the years, and trying to get that really brilliant sunrise is what I was going after. And then finally one year, I managed to get it. But there is so much to photograph around this area. You're right on the entrance, the eastern entrance to Yosemite National Park. If you go in, say, the autumn or springtime up until June, I think, is when they start to open up the road. Otherwise, often you might find it's closed. But going further down the valley, you have Mammoth Lakes, Lone Pine, which is amazing for photography as well, with the Alabama Hills, Mount Whitney. And then a little bit further north of Mono Lake, you'll find the ghost town of Bodie, which is great for photography. So time of year, I always prefer the autumn. So September, October time. Spring is also good, but then if you want to do some of these other excursions like into Yosemite or say up into the White Mountains to photograph the bristlecone pine trees, if you go too early, chances are they're going to be closed off by snow. So late May, early June is probably the best time to go for that as well. But yeah, so definitely Mono Lake is an incredible place to photograph. As far as crowds go, I've never seen that many people there, so that's why it's a wonderful experience. At number 7 on my list is Maroon Bells Snowmass Wilderness in Colorado. Now, this is located in between Snowmass Village and Aspen, and it's a one-way drive up to the lake. And in the early days when I first went out there, there was nobody there as far as paying to go in. Now you have to pay something like $10 to go up. The parking is very limited, that's probably why. But if you go early in the morning, before 8 o'clock, you used to be able to go in and photograph and then come out before 8. But now they've made it so that you have to have reservations even then. So I think they're capitalizing on photographers going in there to photograph. But it is an amazing place to photograph the Maroon Bells peaks reflecting in the lake. Best time of the year to go. Autumn is great, but you will be sharing it with a lot of other people. It's nicely, the path around the lake is nicely situated so that you're not going to have anybody in your shot wherever you are. But you want to get your spot and just stay there. And now I shot this particular image in the summertime. I was going to Crested Butte for the wildflowers, and I thought I'll just swing up and do some shots of Maroon Bells. And you know, there were a few people there. It wasn't that bad, but I waited for the dawn light, and I was rewarded with this really nice pink sky over the mountain. Now, other places to photograph in the area, obviously there's so much to do in the Rockies, but I decided to go and look at Crystal Mill, or Dead Horse Mill as it's sometimes referred to. That's a short drive away, and it's not an easy drive to get into. It's a four-wheel drive road, if you want to call it that. I mean, there are some parts of the road that are actually slipping down a cliffside. If you have any fear of heights, then I wouldn't recommend it. You can walk in. It's a 5-mile hike in. There is a ghost town called Crystal just beyond the mill, which is very quirky. There are a few people that live there during the summer, and I've been told by the owner of the mill that there is one guy that lives there all year round. But I would recommend the best time of the day to photograph this is in the afternoon, when the light is actually hitting the front of the mill. If you go in the morning, it's going to be backlit. It's a different sort of image. Say if you go in the autumn, when you have all those aspens in beautiful yellow color, you'll get the light coming through those. So that could be good as well. At number 6, there's one location that I couldn't omit from my list, and that is the Grand Canyon National Park. This is just an incredible place for photography, just to go and look at the awe-inspiring scenery there. But the South Rim, I reckon, is probably my favorite, and some of the locations that I like to do for, say, sunrise would be Yaqui Point, Hopi Point, and Yavapai Point. Now, there's so many different locations along the rim that you can stop. It's quite easy to do, but I would recommend doing little hikes down into the rim, below the rim, and you can get some quite unique locations and compositions there. Also, fly over. Now, I've taken the helicopter trip over the canyon. That's pretty amazing. And even if you feel up for an adventure, try the rafting down the Colorado River. Now, if you go to the North Rim, it's less crowded by far. There are more autumn colors. If you go in the autumn, you'll see aspens there, but there are not probably as many viewpoints as the South Rim. But if you really want to go for an adventure, go out to Torrewheap, which is, I think it's about a 50-mile road out to basically the dead end. There's no facilities there. You have this gorgeous view down into the canyon, which is great for sunrises. Time of the year to go, I always prefer the quieter times, so I tend to go on the shoulder seasons, so in the autumn and then also in the wintertime. Now, this image that I took here was shot in March, so they had fresh snow, and I was in Phoenix at the time, heard that they had fresh snow coming in, so I thought, right, I'm shooting up to get some really nice snowfalls around on the trees. So yeah, definitely I would photograph that in the morning is probably the best, and at sunset. During the day, it tends to flatten out, so I don't find it that inspiring for photography. So your best times are in the morning and the evenings. At number 5, if you love coastal photography, then Oregon is the place to go, namely Samuel H. Boardman State Corridor. It is just a stunning coastline with sea stacks, trees growing off the sea stacks like you can see in this shot here. It's a 12-mile area, but there's so much to shoot around this area. If you go further north, you go to Bannon Beach. There's some beautiful sea stacks there, really nice sandy beaches. If you go further south, just over the border into California, you have the giant redwoods. And then if you go inland, then you can photograph Crater Lake. So there's a lot to photograph in this small area. Now, the best time of year to go, I would recommend in the autumn, or in the wintertime. I've heard is very good for sunsets, but I was there in, I believe it was October, and when I got these images. But yeah, any time of the year, because it's not really reliant on seasons. There are times then when you're going to get the winter storms. You can get some really dramatic crashing waves over the sea stacks. So any time of the year really would be great for this. Making our way down the list at number 4 is Mount Rainier National Park. Now, Mount Rainier as a mountain itself is 14,410 feet high. It's the highest mountain in the Cascade Range. And I've since then learned when researching about it, it is one of the most dangerous volcanoes as well because of the glaciers that surround the mountain. And I mean, it hasn't erupted for thousands of years, but if the volcano were to erupt, the ashfall alone would just block out North America. So hopefully it's not going to happen anytime soon. But as far as photography goes, there's just a lot to photograph there. But one of my favorite locations is Tipso Lake. Now, this is at the far eastern end of the park. And on this occasion, when I went there, I tried to take my workshop up there, but unfortunately it was closed off because of the forest fires at the time of the year, a few years ago when we were there. And so I was actually staying in the area for several months. So I went back about a month later and I was able to go in, hike down to the lake, and I couldn't believe there was only one other photographer there. And we had this amazing sunrise where the clouds just lit up. But there are so many other lakes to catch the reflection of the mountain in the lake, such as Reflection Lake. Now, the best time of the year to go, I would recommend summertime for the wildflowers and autumn for when the huckleberry turns that crimson red. Now, in this picture, when I was photographing this from the footpath of all this beautiful red foreground, there were tourists walking behind me, and I heard one guy say, "That's a bear. It's a grizzly bear." And I turned around, I thought, grizzly? We don't have grizzlies in California. Not that I know of. I turned around and there's a black bear just foraging through the huckleberries, and he wasn't taking any notice of the tourists. But I would recommend, though, autumn is my favorite time to go there. It's not as crowded, and the colors are just vibrant. At number 3 on my list is Monument Valley. Now, if you've seen any westerns, chances are it may have been filmed at Monument Valley. If it had those classic iconic mittens, the buttes and the mesas there. John Wayne immortalized this place back in the 50s, I think, is when they first started doing films there. They've done countless commercials. Back to the Future was shot there as well. I've got to laugh when you watch some of these westerns and they have saguaro cacti in Monument Valley. They don't grow there. They grow in the southern part of Arizona, from, say, between Sedona and right down to Phoenix is when you start seeing the saguaros. But as far as photography goes, Monument Valley is just a wonderful place. Now, I've been photographing it over the years. I've seen it in its sort of raw form before it's been commercialized too much. When I say too much, it's still not that overly commercialized. Now, they do have a really nice hotel right on the ridge called The View, and each room has a beautiful view over the mittens. So you could essentially photograph from your balcony. I wouldn't recommend it. I would say take the drive down into the valley. I think it's a 17 mile, I think, or 12 to 17 mile drive around the valley. You can do that on your own. There's classic locations like North Window, John Ford Point, and Sand Springs, as you can see here in one of my shots. Now, as far as time of year, I would recommend any time of the year is good. Probably you want to avoid the summertime because of the heat, but there are specific things to photograph there only in the summertime. Now, there's an image called Teardrop Arch that is famous, namely by another landscape photographer who made this famous, David Munch. Now, this is only really good in the summertime, and I went up there with an Indian guide, and he said there is one particular day where the sun sets between a crevice in the mesa, and you get the last light on it, and it's really nice. Otherwise, if you go too late in the year, you'll get shadows cast across the face of the rock face. So I think I shot this in June, but I mean, I think the only way to get in there, I would recommend going in with a Navajo Indian guide, because they know where they're going, and the terrain getting in there is quite rugged. But if you want to hire a guide, go back into Mystery Valley. And also, like what I did for one of my groups, we went up to Hunts Mesa. We had the guide set up a camp for us, so we photographed at sunset and over the valley, and it was just, the view up there is fantastic because you're high up looking down on the mesas. And then we camped out, had dinner over a campfire, and then we did some night photography because it is so dark out there. The stars are just amazing. And then for first light in the morning. And as far as an experience goes, this is probably one of the best experiences that I've ever had as a photographer. So I would highly recommend that. We're getting down the list now. At number 2, I have Bryce Canyon National Park. Now, I love photographing Bryce Canyon, mainly because of the hoodoos and the brilliant colors there. And because of the altitude, it's over 9,000 feet high at the highest point in the park. It is subjected to winter conditions, so you get the snowfalls. Now, I love going in the wintertime because there's less people, obviously, but getting those snowfalls as a contrast to that really rich orange color is fantastic for photography. Now, there is an 18-mile drive down to Rainbow Point, the furthest point of the park, but I would highly recommend doing the hikes down into the canyon, because there are some amazing formations there. And I wouldn't recommend going in the summertime. I choose to go in the wintertime or the autumn because the heat is not so bad then. As far as my favorite locations to photograph there, I would say sunrise from Sunset Point. It doesn't sound logical, but it works, believe me. There you can actually photograph the sun peeking over the canyon, and then to your left you'll have fantastic Queen's Garden. To the right you have Silent City. But there's just so much there to photograph. Now, I would say as far as accommodation goes, you can stay in the park. They have national park accommodation. I don't really prefer staying in the park myself. You can stay just outside the gate. There's Ruby's, which is, it's been there for years. Great accommodation, and the food is very good as well. And finally, at number 1 on my list is Yosemite National Park. Now, what can you say about Yosemite? I mean, it's just an iconic place to photograph. Immortalized by the father of landscape photography, Ansel Adams. Classic places like Half Dome, El Capitan, Glacier Point. There's just so much there to photograph. Now, I think that given that it is probably one of the most visited national parks, second to the Smoky National Park, Smoky Mountains, you would think it would be overrun with people all the time and you wouldn't be able to get any good photography there. I've never found that to be the case. Of course, if you go to places like Tunnel Viewpoint, where I've taken this picture, yeah, it's an easy one to do. The car park is right there. You turn up and there is a retaining wall. You can set your pack down there, set your tripod up. There's the valley. Everybody gets that same shot. You might think that's not very original, but when I took this one, I went up in January in hopes of getting snowfalls, but instead, I guess with global warming, it was just too warm and I had a lot of rain. It rained one day to the point where I didn't think I was going to have any photography that day, but it started clearing in the afternoon, so I shot up to Tunnel View. I knew that was the place I wanted to photograph to get the last light coming across El Capitan. The storm cleared, the mist just, you know, moved through the valley. It was fantastic. It moved up over Bridal Veil Falls, and it was just like it was framing it. But if you go off the beaten trail, the well-worn trail or the car park, you can discover some places that are very quiet. You won't have any other people there. I like to actually go, say, some of the trails up to Vernal Falls and Nevada Falls. Those are nice. But if you just follow the course of the Merced River through the valley, you'll find some really nice quiet places where you get some fantastic reflections of, say, El Capitan. Best time to go, I would say, in the autumn. The autumn colors in Yosemite Valley are spectacular, and you get that mist as well. Also the wintertime, you won't have the huge crowds, but you can get that, hopefully get the snowfalls. Actually, I found out that the snow came in finally a week after I left. It's typical, but a good reason to go back again. So there you have it. That is my list at what I think are the best locations in the United States for landscape photography. Now, you might have some of your favorite places, but let's hear about them. See if there's any places that maybe I've not heard of. Hit it down in the comments, hit those like buttons. That does help our channel out quite a lot. And if you haven't subscribed to us, please hit that subscribe button as well. It's free, so what do you have to lose? You might pick up some good information. That's what I'm here about. To share my experiences over the years with you. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.